Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is the Texas PACE Authority's January T5 webinar. We do these each month. T5 stands for the third Thursday at 2 training series, the first one of 2022. So we're going to take the opportunity today to review really what was a fantastic year in 2021, and then looking ahead to 2022, some things that are happening there. And I'm pleased today not to be the only presenter, but to be joined by some guest presenters, some significant stakeholders in PACE in Texas who are going to talk about projects and programs in their representative areas. So we will go ahead and get started now. So our presenters today, I'm kind of the moderator, but I'll be presenting also at the end. Deb Taylor, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Texas PACE Authority, and we're joined by John Frew with Frew Development Group. So with that, let me first introduce John Frew. John is the president and CEO of Frew Development Group, LLC. They are a commercial and residential real estate development company. He established Frew Development Group in 2003 as a continuation of his career as an attorney, investment banker, and senior governmental official. Frew Development Group has managed more than 2 million square feet of renovation and ground-up construction, with ownership interests including hospitality, retail, and multifamily. So John, I'm going to hit your first slide, and why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Dub, and welcome. It's good to have everyone here today, and not in person, but someday we'll get back to that. Let's go to the first slide. Or the second slide, sorry. There we go. So I'm going to start off just without equivocation that I believe PACE is an exceptionally valuable tool for developers. It's a valuable tool for communities, for lenders all across the range. But speaking as a developer, I've been very pleased with it. I'll offer some pros and cons. I mean, nothing can always be all positive. So I really searched and talked to my staff and my partners and said, okay, let's add the plus and minuses. And the pros, it's up to 20% of your capital stack for eligible expenditures. That's huge. Second, it's non-recourse to the developer. Now, the recourse is in place during construction, but it burns off and when you get your final CO. So that was not the driving issue for us, but it was very important. And third, it's treated as equity by your lender. So your capital stack can involve less cash equity supplemented by the PACE loan. That's enormously valuable. The cons, it's not cheap compared to your debt. So you can look at it as expensive debt or cheap equity. Our loans have been around 6%. We found that to be a reasonable number to pay. So we were very pleased with it. Second, if you're going to sell your project, you should expect that, at least in my experience, that the buyers are going to want the PACE loan paid off. So as we've gone into our third PACE loan, we've negotiated a payoff penalty. Normally it burns off after 5 years or so, but we looked at that year 3 period and tried to get something that would amount to a tax versus a penalty. And we've been pleased with that, but it's something you really have to keep in mind. And last, it's not a big thing, but as I said, lenders treat it as equity. Some lenders also treat it as debt, in that they include the PACE loan payment in debt service coverage calculations. But overall, enormously valuable tool. So next slide, please. Keys to success. So first, in my experience, I think it's very important to decide whether you're going to use one lender or two. Typical commercial lenders are not PACE lenders, and typical PACE lenders will make, or some of them will make construction loans, but at a higher rate. So we blended the two. We had a long-time lender that we matched with a PACE-only lender, a non-bank bank that I'll talk about in a second, but that worked great for us. Second is the payoff penalty, negotiate that. Third, have a solid relationship with your local officials. It's in our case, we would not have succeeded without for that. But I believe that if you're going to build in a community, that's something you ought to do anyway. But in the case of our path, it made all the difference in the world. And then fourth, trust the Texas Pace Authority. They're good, they're smart, they're respected, and they're good people. I found them very easy to work with. And they know what they're doing. The pace in the box process, they have this down, and it's really pretty cool to see the whole thing evolve as it has. Next slide, please. So why Rockport? Rockport, if you've not been, you really should visit. It's a great little community on the Texas coast, about 20 miles northeast of Corpus. My wife's family and my partner's family have been there for generations. And, we were married there. It's our second home. We love it there. My company, as Doug mentioned, has developed more than 2 million square feet of space in the various sectors, including the HEB Center in Cedar Park, Texas. Very proud of that one. But we were preparing to build a hotel in Rockport with my partner, Mark Orr. Mark has been a developer in the Rockport area since 1995, and his father for 40 years prior to that. And we had been planning this hotel, and then Hurricane Harvey, the bluish greenhouse you see in that's our former house, and our boat is somewhere under that pile. When you see a picture of a house that's just standing, every other house is destroyed. Your instinct is to say, well, those people were so lucky. They're not lucky. You don't want to be the house that's standing because there are no workers, there are no stores. It's awful. And we were fortunate enough to sell our house to someone who then fixed it up over the course of the next year and a half or so as workers became available. And the insurance took care of the boat. But the whole idea that was, instead of a hotel, I called Mark and said, listen, we're both going to get back into Rockport from where we're up in Austin sometime in the next couple of weeks. And let's start thinking about something different. Our company was hired by the state of New York to demolish 700 homes on Staten Island. And we saw firsthand how challenging the aftermath of these natural disasters are, and the absolute need for housing. So I gave Mark a high bar, and I said, look, if I could wave a wand, I'd have three things. First, we'd get enough land to build 2 phases. Second, we would have, it'd be in the city of Rockport just for emotional purposes. And third, and this is probably going to be impossible, we want it to be in a non-flood zone. I mean, you're a mile from the beach, and it's kind of tough to do, but it took him a while, and he found it. And so about a month later, we closed on a 34-acre property at the intersection of Highway 35, Pearl, which is Pearl Point, hence the name. Next phase, or next slide. So why PACE? Well, we had closed on a PACE loan with Collins Community Credit Union in Iowa, our longtime lender, and Stonehill Capital of Atlanta, our PACE lender. And we closed on a PACE loan for this hotel that we opened about 2 weeks ago in Dillon, Colorado. And I called them and said, listen, we're entertaining this housing project in Rockport, Texas. Would you be interested? And they both said, absolutely. They wanted to be a part of it. So next slide, if you would. So over the course of a very rapid time, it was about 5 to 6 months, September 2019, we had our first discussions with our lender, our PACE lender, and they in turn had discussions with the Texas Pace Authority. A month later, we had the first meeting with the Aransas County and TPA to review PACE in the box and the process and get them comfortable. Mark has known Judge Burt Mills, the judge of Aransas County for maybe 40 years, but our senior project manager, Russell Cole, and the judge were boyhood friends. I mean, we have deep relations, and there was a lot of trust going in, and that made a huge difference. So they asked for a public meeting to introduce PACE, and Marina came up in November and did a great presentation. And then so they put it on the agenda for a month later. And in December, Charlene made a presentation. The respect was just very obvious, and the professionalism, and they trusted the Texas Pace Authority, and they adopted it. So next slide. Now our challenge is that PACE does not, or a greenfield site does not qualify for PACE. So this is our site. You can see where the trees are cleared for phase 1. Phase 2 is to the right, and then the corner is where today is a commercial setting. So when I practiced law, I had the privilege of having clients that said, John, don't tell us what we cannot do. Tell us what we can do. Think creatively. Find a way to make this work. So I pulled our group together and gave them that challenge and said, we need to think about how we could do this. And what we came up with is, next slide, we built a garage. We built a garage and convinced the city of Rockport to issue a certificate of occupancy. Now, that usually doesn't happen on a garage. It can happen, but it's normally, the CO comes with the house or with the associated residential building. But City of Rockport also great relationships, and they wanted our project as a recovery tool from Hurricane Harvey badly, and they were willing to do this. So we built a garage, and the rest of the site became a renovation. The rest of the site qualified for PACE. It was as simple as that. Creative, not unusual, but it required those relationships at the local and state level and the county level to make it work. Now, next slide, please. So, January 2020, 5 months after we had our first meetings, we closed on our construction and PACE loans. In February of last year, we received our CO on our final building, and this year, about 2 weeks ago, we're 95% occupied, and phase 1 is on the market. So we could not be more pleased with the whole thing. Now, as I close, let me go on to phase 2 in the next slide. So another unique challenge for a developer with PACE is that when you build and you're going to sell, then you really need a single purpose entity, and you need a separate tax parcel. So phases 1 and 2 at Pearl Point are owned by separate entities, and phases 1 and 2 are on separately platted entities. That meant that our phase 1 qualification for PACE did not apply to phase 2. So next slide. We built another garage. It was as simple as that. This time we built the maintenance building, but this was the first one up. It's right behind the phase 1 garage, and we qualified for PACE and did the whole thing again. So we've closed on our loans. And then the next slide, please, Deb. And one more slide. Yeah. Phase 2 is well under construction. So it works is my message. It's valuable. It works for us anyway. I believe it'll work for others. But this is a case where a community was ravaged by a hurricane. We never would have thought about building multifamily housing there. But circumstances came around, and as we explored PACE with the local leaders, with our lenders, and ultimately the Texas Pace Authority, we kept finding a green light, and we just went for it. And we're very, very pleased and proud of our relationship with the Texas Pace Authority in this tool. Thank you.
John, thank you. And just to clarify, I think that's an excellent illustration of how to utilize PACE on a greenfield site that can be developed in phases or tranches like this. The other thing to point out, which you didn't mention specifically, is that on new construction, the baseline essentially for PACE becomes whatever the applicable local codes are. And with Pearl Point, what was done is equipment was specified, and building envelope specifications were higher than that, which means that over the life of the property itself, that tenants are going to enjoy lower utility costs than they would have ordinarily. That also adds some resiliency benefits to the property, which obviously in an area devastated by a hurricane is very important.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you being with us.